What's up? Some of you have requested me making a video about how to gain weight on the raw carnivore slash primal diet, and this is what I'm gonna do today. The best way to do it is to basically constantly spike your insulin at least somewhat, because insulin is a growth hormone. We want to have as many growth hormones in our body working all the time when we want to grow, of course. And also, when you constantly have spiked insulin, then a hormone called leptin will be constantly blocked. The more insulin you have, the less leptin you're gonna have. And leptin is a hormone that tells your body that it is satiated. So basically, you are never really gonna feel satiated, and you always will have the opportunity to eat, and you will always feel somewhat hungry. That is why people who eat tons of carbs, they eat cakes, they eat sweets all day, they can eat so much, tons of food, because they never are satiated, because their leptin signals are constantly blocked. So we can use this to our advantage now. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to eat a lot of fruit and honey. Be aware though that fruit and honey will age you, but I think if you're underweight, then it is better to, for a couple of months, maybe 1, 2, 3 months, to eat a lot of fruit and honey than to just be underweight all the time, because that is also not really healthy. I believe that you should probably eat around 30 to 40 grams of honey. I think honey is a little bit superior to fruit, because fruit does still have fiber and so on, and honey also has enzymes, which makes it a little bit more digestible. So I am more in favor of honey than eating fruits. I would say 30 to 40 grams of honey a day is pretty good. You can do more. If you don't tolerate it, you can do less. So what I would say is get a jar of honey and take a spoon and put it wherever you're sitting. Let's say you are at work, put that next to you if you can. And then just every time you get the urge to get something sweet, you just eat a little bit of it. And that little bit will just spike your insulin. Try to eat as much as possible of it. And the next thing that you have to do is, or that I think is very easy, is that you should eat foods that are very, very, easily eaten, right? So for example, if you drink water, then just replace it with milk. Because when you normally drink 2 liters of water, but you suddenly drink 2 liters of raw milk, that is an extra 1,300 calories. Especially because milk also has growth hormones, which again, we need in order to grow, of course. The next thing is that we have to consume, not only do you have to spike our insulin by consuming a lot of carbohydrates, or at least some carbohydrates, but at the same time, we also have to eat more fat. Because the way you build weight, and especially fat, the way you build that is by spiking your insulin and eating fat at the same time. So it is basically impossible to build new weight or to build new fat if you don't spike your insulin and at the same time eat fat. Also, raw fat has about 900 calories if you just eat basically beef tallow. Yeah, you can eat 100 grams, you can eat 50 grams. 50 grams is 450 calories. That is a lot. And again, that is exactly what you need. The next thing I would say is that it is important that you eat every 1 or 2 hours. And that is for 2 reasons. One, it is a lot easier, at least I find it a lot easier to eat a lot of times, but then like small amounts. And also, the more times you eat, the more times you spike your insulin. Because not only do you spike your insulin with carbohydrates, but you also spike your insulin with eating fat and protein. So the more you can eat, the more insulin you're gonna have, the faster the faster you can basically gain weight. And you have to put yourself in the mindset that when you eat healthy food, like raw organs, raw meat, raw eggs, all of those kind of things, blood, whatever, all these things, you have to put yourself in the mindset that more is usually better. So don't be afraid to eat too much, because too much of a good thing isn't really a bad thing. So it is better to eat too much than too little, especially when the food is healthy. Also, other raw dairy like raw cheese is a good idea. You can go with raw kefir, or other very nutritionally dense foods. Of course, depending on how old you are, you may want to grow or you may want to do other things, and then organs are very important. You need a lot of vitamin A. That is why I would say that liver is quite a good thing. Also fermented liver, of course, especially when you're eating a lot. I think fermenting food, especially organs, is a very good idea because you're gonna have so much bacteria that will help you digest the food. In order to gain weight, you need to eat a lot more food than you usually do, but you can only really eat a lot more food than you usually do when your body is able to process all of that food. When your body is not able to process it, then there's no real point in eating more food because you're just gonna shit it out. So by increasing the bacterial load of the body, you essentially help yourself digest more food, and the best way to do it is, in my opinion, to create high meat, i.e. fermenting. For example, liver. Liver is basically the only meat I ferment. The way you do it is you basically get a glass jar, and then you put some liver into it. You cut it into small pieces, you put some liver into it, fill it about halfway up, and then you put it into the fridge. And then you basically wait, and every, I guess, 5 to 7 days, you open it up, let some air in for the bacteria to thrive, and then you close it up again and you wait. You can ferment the food a lot faster when you leave it outside of the fridge, but I feel like it's just, in my opinion, it just works the best when doing it inside of the fridge. If you don't have any high meat right now, then it is probably not a bad idea to just put it into a jar and leave it out anywhere. Basically, you could even leave it out outside if it's not too cold outside, and that would then help you ferment the food a lot faster. I will now tell you what I currently eat, because I'm having the exact, I wouldn't say problem, because I don't have a problem with it anymore, but I have the exact same goal, I guess, of gaining weight. And what I'm currently basically eating or drinking is 2 liters of raw milk. That is what I'm basically drinking every day because of the insulin, because of the growth hormone, and because of the calories. And then about a pound or about 500 grams of raw ground beef from a local butcher. And then I usually add either one of the following 2 things. I either add about 100 grams of raw beef fat, or I add 10 eggs, which I, by the way, eat whole. I eat the whole egg, right? Of course, raw, but I don't discriminate against the egg white. I know that a lot of people in this community, in the raw primals, raw carnivore community, they say, hey, you shouldn't really be eating the egg white because there's evidence in it which blocks biotin. I haven't really found that to be the case, and in the book, well, here we go, in Arjun's Wonder Planet's book, he says that it's not really a problem, and it is actually beneficial to consume the whole egg, because when only consuming the egg yolk, you speed up your metabolism, which is of course not a good thing if you want to gain weight. So I have found that eating the whole egg not only gives me more energy, but also helps my muscles and my whole body retain more water. So yeah, that's pretty much what I eat. I also eat a little bit of honey, again, probably 20 to 30 grams every day. But that's pretty much it. No fruits right now because it's winter. And when we're talking about the caloric model, I probably eat around about 3,200 calories at the moment, which is most certainly enough for me to gain weight. So to summarize this, it is, again, really important to eat foods that are easily eatable, right? So for example, don't try to eat 1.5 kilos or 3 pounds of steak or any kind of meat, especially if you're not used to it, because that is just, it's just not very easy to do, and you're also going to miss some nutrients. So it is far easier to just drink a lot of your calories, you know, eat very caloric dense foods like the beef fat. For example, if you have access to raw butter, that is a good way as well. If you have access to unsalted raw cheese, that is a good way to do it as well. Basically get the highest energy foods given their density and try to eat those foods then. That is pretty much all I can give you. I hope this video helped, and I wish you all the luck on your weight gaining journey.